Hello and welcome my partners in crime, and thank you for joining me again today for another true crime case. Now these cases that I'm doing today, and I say cases because there is two of them, it also brings in the Reece Boxell case that you haven't seen yet, but it is up on Members and it's coming out for you. So by the time this one comes out, you'd have already seen the Reece Boxell case. So these are all unsolved cases, all different, but have some connection or could have some connection to each other because of where the disappearances took place and the time of what they took place and what was going on in this area at this time. Also, the police's thoughts on different things of what could have gone on, and really what has been investigated by the police and what has not, right? Now, a lot of the time, especially in 1985, because this is 1985, 1986 and 1988, murders or disappearances, and I think murders. So there's a lot going on here, but there has to be a warning out with this case, or these cases, because, you know, there's going to be some really graphic stuff here. We're going to talk about, and these have come up before, this paedophile ring, the Dirty Dozen. Also, it's going to bring up some cases, isn't it, of older cases that we've done, like Barry Lewis and Jason Swift and Mark Tilsley. These cases are going to come sort of into this because they're in the same area and they're at the same time. And they're linked in some way, I believe, or could be, right? Could be. This is all theories because two of these bodies of what cases to doing today have never been found at all. So it's really important that these cases are told truthfully and honestly, and we look at what the information we've got in these cases. There's not a lot of information on the first case that I'm going to discuss because it was first ruled as a suicide. And then, or a suicide, how did they put it in them days? A suicide or an accidental suicide to get some sexual gratification. This is what they're saying happened to this 15-year-old boy, but there's evidence there to prove. And I think the inquest then changed it to his death was not suspicious, but it was open verdict on that. So they really didn't know. So there's not much I can find on this lad. The other two, or the other one is Kevin Hicks, and we will go through his case. Again, there is not much also on that case. And then the other one again is just bringing in bits of Reece Boxell case in relation to the connection maybe between all of these murders. So that's an overview really, I suppose, of what's going to this case today. So listen, if you are cautious about this case, because I know a lot of you don't like the cases when it involves offences against children. There's some graphic detail in here about offences that happen to children. And so if this case is not for you, I suggest that you switch off now. So the first case that we're going to look at in this mixture of unsolved cases, or, you know, sort of you can say unsolved, but they are really unsolved, is Reece Colins' case. Now, Reece Colins was 15 at the time of his death in 1985. This was sort of one of the first earlier murders, or, you know, I actually think it was a murder of what we're going to talk about. And then I think with Reece's case, it's very difficult because there's not much on it, as I've said in the intro. There's really not much on this at all. So Reece was out with his mates in 1985, and then he just didn't turn up. He didn't go home. So he was reported missing after failing to return home on the evening of 1985. His parents were told not to worry, as he hadn't been gone 24 hours. Now, we are talking about 1985. Today, the response on kids going missing and stuff is much more quicker than it was then. But they assumed, oh, he's 15, you know, his turn up, because I don't think they felt there was any reason to think otherwise. And also, that was in them times the procedure of what happened is that you had to wait 24 hours to report someone missing just in case they turned up. The man could have been at the, or boy could have been at the mate's, couldn't he? Could have been anywhere. We wouldn't do that now, right? If a child now 15 disappeared under suspicious circumstances, or they knew he was going to come home and he didn't turn up, the police would certainly be out there looking now. So it's a lot different. So Reece's dad, he just kept ringing the police and saying, listen, there's something wrong. Right, the family was ringing and ringing. There's something wrong. Several hours had gone past. This boy, who would usually just turn up home, was not there. He was not coming. The father knew there was something wrong. They knew. This family, but the police, as I said, in them days, listen, he ain't been gone 24 hours. There's nothing we're going to do. Not even the police weren't even out looking for him. So in the end, after several hours, the father took his dog that would have known the scent of Reece out. We've had a little dog thing before in another case, but anyway, because dogs have got so much more, smelling ability than we have. So he went out, the dad, with their dog to look for Reece, and he found him from Croydon in London, right? This is relevant. This is really relevant to everything else about all these cases and what we're going to talk about in this case. This was 1985. This was Croydon in London. Reece has gone missing. The fathers then took the dog, looked for him, and in the local parkland, the dog led Roy, Reece's father, to this cluster of trees, where he found Reece hanging from a belt from a tree. Now, terrible, isn't it, for this father? Couldn't get any help from the police because he hadn't been gone 24 hours. Takes the dog literally tracks down the boy in a local park area. The boy's found hanging. The police are called, then of course they've come out then, and they've put it down to suicide by accident. Now, they're saying in them days, because, listen, as I said, there's not much on this case. So for the police to come out with something like that, there must have been evidence of the way he was left that would make them assume that this was a sexually orientated crime, right? Or he took his life to get some gratification, right, from it. But it's very difficult to find anything, as I say, on this case. So this is all assumptions. I'm only thinking why the police thought this. Because if a young lad had just gone out and hung himself from a tree, they would have just said it was death by hanging. Okay, it was suicide. They didn't. They said it was accidental death to get some sexual gratification. That's what they said in 1985. Which is suspicious in itself when you think and we look at the background of Reece, right? It's a strange case, this one. Now, in 1985, this was the police's assumption, okay? This is what happened. The father and the family of Reece Colins weren't having none of it at all. They couldn't believe that this was what the police were saying, and also what the coroner at the time said. Because I don't think they really looked into this case thoroughly enough. Today we would have had the forensic teams in there and looking. Because what happened was, Lee had used a belt from like a raincoat or a coat. Now this, he didn't have that sort of coat. He had no access to a belt like that at all. Nothing like that. If he had found the belt lying around, the belt would have been dirty. It would have looked like it had been outside a long time. It didn't. It was clean. The tree that was used, or that they said that he used, was covered in this green algae. And body were clear from any of that algae of that tree. So, you're meant to have used a belt that you didn't own, that clearly was quite new, to hang yourself from a tree covered in this green algae but you've got none of this on you at all. You are left hanging from this tree in a position that makes people think this is a sexually orientated crime, right? Whether by yourself, by your own hand, or by somebody else's. So there's lots of issues here. Today, that would have been suspicious right away. Right away. Because how can you try and harm yourself when you are when there's a belt that you haven't owned and they've got nothing on you at all that would have any relation to this tree? So if he had nothing on him from this tree, then somebody else was there. Somebody else was there at the site of this, and I'm going to say murder because it definitely was murder, right? This boy was definitely murdered. He did not take his own life at all because the evidence clearly shows it was impossible for him to have done that. So, listen, if this case had come up now, of course, it would have been totally different, wouldn't it? It would have been totally different. Now, when there was a second inquest and it was changed then to, an open verdict on his death because the coroner agreed that there were certain issues with his death that didn't really warrant the first cause of death was what they said. So it's an open verdict. But that doesn't give the family anything, does it? It gives them absolutely nothing. It gives them absolutely nothing. We know, don't we, that Reece now, there's something really tragic about this case because it's just been left, forgotten about, and someone has definitely here got away with murder. So as I think I'll show you a little clip of it actually, and I've done a clip of it before, and I think it was a clip. It's the inquest. The only news article that you can find on Reece Colins' case is the inquest where one of his lads, his friends, this young lad, said that Reece had been locked in a house by a group of his mates as a joke, right? They had tied a bit of wire around his neck, not tightly, and left him in the dark because Reece Colins was so scared of the dark. So that's the only bit of evidence here that I can find anything to do with this, because everyone just assumed he committed suicide and that was it. If Reece Colins was so scared of the dark, because after this incident happened he came out of there absolutely crying and really upset, and I think this is probably why the first inquest may have thought that he took his own life because of that, but he didn't. He didn't. Because Reece didn't like the dark. He was so scared of the dark. So why would he go out, not come home, go to a parkland in a cluster of trees in the dark to do sexual acts and using strangulation as part of that? These days, as I said, we would look at this case totally different. Now, at the time of this case, and we're going to have to come into this a little bit later because I'm going to want to move on to Kevin Hicks' case now. But anyway, that's the overview of Reece Colins. And to tell you the truth, I feel so sorry because I could only find one photograph. I could only find that little bit of newspaper clipping of this young lad's life, this 15-year-old, that life was taken from him, absolutely, by someone or some persons, should I say. And I think we need to bring him into this case because of what else was going on in this area at the time. So this is why I want to now go on to Kevin Hicks' case. Okay, let's have a look at Kevin's case. Now, Kevin Hicks, I'm going to do a little bit of an overview before we go into a lot of other stuff. So Kevin Hicks, he went missing from Addison Road in Croydon in the UK, again, another case, very, very close actually. These cases are all linked by areas as well, so very, very close. And he went missing on the 2nd of March 1986, a year after Reece Colins was found in the way he was. So the timing is important here, and also the area of these two cases are important. Now, he was 16 at the time when he went missing. Now, Kevin was at the time wearing blue jeans, white trainers, lacrosse jacket with white at the bottom, black at the top, and then with a red line, I think, on the top of the chest. He was 5'10", and he had brown hair. Now, it's important now when you think about the distinguishing part of Kevin Hicks, because Kevin Hicks, it is said, and I hope I'm right in this because this is the research I've done, he had one blue eye and one hazel eye. So this is important to think when you're thinking, has anyone seen this boy, right? One blue eye, one brown. So if you don't remember Kevin, what he was wearing, everything else, that's his eye colours. It's important that that's part of this, because it brings us into other little things down the line here. And I think this is like, because it's the overview, I think Kevin would be 51 years old now, going on 52, and has never been seen really from this day. So it was a cold Sunday evening at about 8:20 or 8:40 p.m. In the evening, or 20:40 if you'd like to have it that way. Now, he walked to his local shop, right, the Spa Inn, and that was about 300 yards from his home. It is said that Kevin could see from his window the shop. I've also put a map up highlighting the walk from his home to the shop for you to see just how close this shop was. People are not sure if he made it to the shop or not, because there was no CCTV. But there must have been witnesses. But anyway, we'll come back to this in a minute. Okay, so Kevin Hicks, let's get into this case in a little bit more depth now. That was the overview. He's left his home at 8:40 p.m. to go to the local shop, 300 yards down the road. Have a look at the map so you can see the distance. And wearing all this stuff, he had one blue eye, one brown eye. It was close to his home, so he would have gone into the shop quite a lot. There was no CCTV, of course there wasn't in 1986, but he was also then seen again at 10 p.m. by somebody else, right? So that's the overview of this case. Okay, so poor old Kevin. He went missing in 1986 while walking to this local shop in this Adacom street in Croydon. He was never seen again, but in 2016 the Metropolitan Police actually did say that they believed that he had been murdered. Now, Kevin was described as a happy teenager with no problems at school, and he had been applying for jobs in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. So now we have, okay, he's quite happy at home. He has been applying for jobs. That means he's not intention of going anywhere on his own. He was doing quite well at school, and so we can rule out, can't we, that this boy's just got up and left at, 8:40 in the evening with £1 in his pocket. We can rule that out straight away. So now we know, okay, something really terrible has happened to Kevin. So on the 2nd of March 1986, he spent a normal day with his family. As I said, it was a Sunday at their home in Sissinghurst Road and Adacom in Croydon, right? At around 8:30 p.m, he told his mum that he needed to buy some eggs for the next day because he had an O-level economics exam, because in them days we used to do economics, do a bit of cooking and all that. I don't know if they still do now, but I used to love it. So I can see that, but at 8:40 at night, to go and buy eggs, he had this £1 to go and buy the eggs. Now, this is now what confuses me, right, about this case. There's a few things that confuses me about this case. That is one of them. Because if this had been a Sunday, he'd had all day, you know, he hadn't mentioned before to his mum that he had to go and get some eggs, but that was what he said. And as I said, it was a normal day. There was nothing untoward happened that day. He didn't do anything that day, but that's what he said at 8:30. And again, then he just left then about, 8:40 to go to the shop and pick up these eggs. Now, as I said, the shop was a couple of minutes walk. It's a couple of minutes walk from his home. He had £1, and as you could see the shop from his bedroom window, instead of the tree. And that was it. And the shop, I think, was a sparring shop, and it was in Lower Addison Comm Road. Now, Kevin was last seen by someone at 10 p.m. in Shirley Road, walking in the general direction of his home. Now, his poor mum and dad, right, Terry and Derek, died without knowing what's happened to their son. And now I must apologise now to the sister, Alexandra Hicks, because I couldn't find a photo of his mother. I found a photo of his father and I found a photograph of her. I couldn't find one. I couldn't be sure it was his mum or not. And so I didn't use the photo of his mother. But his mum died 10 years prior to the father dying, and they fought and searched for years for something, for their son. They really did. They just never stopped looking. So it's very, very sad, but that's the reason why there's only a picture of the father, and you'll see the slide of the father and Alexander, his sister, who's his sister to this day, continues to look for Kevin and keep the awareness out there. So in 2017, the Metropolitan Police again asked for this, issued this appeal for the public to come forward, or for Kevin himself to come forward. Listen, Kevin didn't leave that house himself for any other reason. He wouldn't have left with just £1 and gone off and never ever come back at all. It's very rare that happens. I mean, it could have. There's a few scenarios I'm going to talk about here with Kevin, and of course that could have been one of them. But I just don't think it is. I think something very sinister has gone on here, and as we go through in this case and it comes out of lots of different things, I'll leave it up to you to make up your own minds what could have happened to Kevin. So listen, they met, as I said, in 2017. They really done this thing, and they was pushing again for more information. They put out £20,000 actually reward for information leading to a conviction. So as far as the Met Police are concerned, Kevin is dead. And to tell you the truth, I probably think Kevin was dead that night. Really, I think that's really what happened to Kevin, and I think the police think that as well. When you think your son says to you at 8:30 at night on a Sunday, just popping down the shop, Mum, because I've got an O-level exam tomorrow. I mean, it would be a GCSE or an A-level now, wouldn't it? I need some eggs. She says, all right, lad, give us him £1. And off he goes. And from that day, in 1986, Kevin has never been seen or heard of again. How terrible it must be for this family. And you've got to, give the sister some credit for the continuation to find some evidence for her boy, for her brother. The son of, Derek and Terry. It's just really upsetting when you think about it, isn't it? So, as throughout these cases, I'm going to be putting up these appeals, if you know any information, or you've got any information on these cases, you can phone these numbers and everything. And this, as with this video goes on, you'll be seeing these flashing up and stuff. And also Kevin and different things that I would like you to take a look at then and now and see. And, see if it jogs your memory in any way. So anyway, let's get back to the case. So let's now look at the facts, right? So the police are saying this is what they believed happened to Kevin. He must have met someone that night, well, clearly, in the hour and a half or the 90 minutes that the person, and then that person attacked him. Perhaps the suspect didn't mean to kill him, but it is clear that Kevin's body must have been disposed of that night. Okay, so let's go now right back to the day. It's turned out that over the years that there has been, I think it was found out after Kevin's disappearance, that he was receiving presents, gifts, quite expensive gifts, and was keeping them quite secret. He didn't tell anybody. Well, he didn't tell his parents. He didn't tell his parents at all. So then that brings up grooming, right? Or you would think, wouldn't you? Today we would think grooming, because grooming went on there in them days, without a doubt, just in a different form. Now it's usually done online. In them days it was done more in contact. But I don't know if it was grooming, because there's some real issues here. So then we have Kevin. This is what the timeline shows. That Kevin left his house at 8:30, probably on a ruse, to say he was going to buy some eggs. And he left the house at 8:40 p.m. They don't know if Kevin had brought the eggs or not. Why not? Because there's no CCTV. Well, the police, they investigated, and I don't know because I can't get hold of the case files on this case. Wouldn't you go and ask the shopkeeper if Kevin Hicks was in here last night, because you know the time he left the house to walk to the shop to buy the eggs? And now if they didn't know Kevin, which they probably did because it was local to his home, 300 metres away, was this lad in here? Was he in here with somebody else? Did he buy the eggs? It's quite simple. Now, if they didn't know Kevin, they could give him a description, couldn't they? They could give the description of him, the clothes he was wearing, the eyes, one blue, one brown. If you don't remember the clothing and everything else, you're going to remember that. You may not say it, but you're going to remember it, because the first thing you do, isn't it, is look in people's eyes. You're serving someone. But I think they would have known Kevin in this shop. They must have. They must have known him. He was local to the area. It was 300 yards from his house. So anyway, all right. So we don't know if he brought any eggs. So where was he for 90 minutes? So it's all right the police saying that he left his home, he met someone, they, attacked him, whether it's by accident or whatever, he was dead. So what about the witness then, 90 minutes later, on Shirley Road, that said that she saw Kevin walking home? She didn't say that she saw Kevin walking home in the distance of his home, in a direction of his home, in distress. She didn't say that he was running home. She said he was walking home. So I believe that Kevin did meet someone. I believe that, I don't know if Kevin was groomed. I'm not sure. Did Kevin meet someone? Have a relationship with someone? Now, a groomer in them days, or in these days, this boy was, 5'10"? He was 16 years old. He could have been sexually active. We don't know, because we don't know anything about Kevin. Not really. He could have been straight or gay, so we don't know, because groomers can be either men or women. It could have been someone local, and I think this is maybe one of the scenarios I want to talk about. That maybe he was having an affair with someone for 90 minutes. He went and saw someone. He was doing something. He was doing something. So some of this just doesn't add up in this case. It just doesn't add up. So there's a couple of scenarios here, right? One, Kevin could have just thought, sod this, I'm off, I'm leaving. Gone. I don't think that happened. Yes, someone was buying Kevin expensive gifts. They were. Kevin would have told someone. He didn't tell his parents, he didn't tell anyone like that. But he would have told someone. His friends. Were the friends talked to? Because if I was now opening this case up again as a cold case, they'd be the ones that I would go for. In this school, his mates, someone knows something. So I agree with the police there. Someone knows something. But whether the person that he was having a relationship with, who was buying him these expensive gifts, is a person that took Kevin's life, or made, the circumstances that made him disappear, is unknown, isn't it? But if you have seen someone for 90 minutes and then someone's seen you then walking home, and I'd like to more question the person, because that person would have been then the last person to see Kevin alive. Who else did they see? What state was he in? Did you really see him? Was it really him? You know, there's questions to be asked here in this case when you're investigating a case. We would have been more in these days, more thorough, more aggressive, I think, on how we would look at this case. But then there's another scenario, that because there is a lot going on in this area. So of course Kevin could have met someone, had a relationship with someone, thought great, got me in bother and getting me eggs because I've seen someone, I'm walking home. And then as he was walking home, then he was then taken by somebody else. That is possible. That is possible in this area at this time in 1985, with what was going on in this area, especially to do with paedophile rings and stuff like that. This is what was really happening here. So there's a lot of scenarios, but some of the theories may be far-fetched, but we have to have an open view here on what could have happened to Kevin, because there is no information or any evidence anywhere of him since that night. That was it. Gone. Now I think there was an anonymous phone call a few years later. I think it was 1996, there was an anonymous phone call, and someone called the Croydon Advertiser and said that they knew, that she knew, so it was a girl, where Kevin's body was. So the scenario is that the police sort of did look and everything, but this could have been the person that he was seeing. I believe he was seeing a girl who was buying in these gifts, probably an older woman. He could have been having an affair, there could have been something going on, this woman could have been married, right? Or it could have been a child that saw what was going on. It could have been. Or it could have been the paedophile ring, someone else that was in that room at the time when things were happening to Kevin, that then rang and said, listen, I know what's happened. Because as I've said before, with paedophile rings, there are kids that are born into it and there are kids that are brought into it. Brought into it. Not all of them are murdered. Some survive. And it could have been one of them that tried to reach out and say, I know what happened. So I don't think we should make it a false allegations that this person's made. This could be a real allegation. So as we go on with this case, this is where this case starts to open up, I think, in where I think of what was really going on in this area at this time. And this also now brings in Hicks Boxell's case sort of back into this as well. So I think when we even look at Reece's case and we look at Kevin's case, we cannot rule out this paedophile ring that was around, or one of the paedophile rings that was around at the time of these disappearances and murders. So we've looked at this gang before, and this is the Dirty Dozen gang, right? These are a paedophile ring that was, run out of Hackney, really. That's where their sort of base was. There was lots of people in it, more than we know, more than what I'm going to show you on slides here. These are the main characters that have been caught for certain crimes that I'm going to show you on here of this Dirty Dozen paedophile ring. There was loads, and probably into the hundreds, that were members of this ring. And we had a lot of cases. I'm going to put a slide up that shows you the case of little Barry Lewis. Then we had Mark Tilsley. Then we have, and if you look at this case in relation actually to Jason Swift's case, Jason Swift was about the same age. They look very similar actually in age. The thing is with paedophile rings, you have paedophile rings that have got lots of different paedophiles in them, like lots of different types of children. So they have specific wants and needs from their victims. So just because these boys are older and taller doesn't mean that they wouldn't be victims of a paedophile ring. Some of them love it, the challenge, more. And, you know, when you think about Kevin Hicks, yes, he was being given expensive gifts and probably groomed. That wouldn't have been, I don't think, the actual ringleader, you know, Sydney Cook, you know, Hissing Sid's way of getting kids. Because if he wanted this boy, they would have just took him. They would have just took him. You know, I think with Mark, I think it was a 50p bag of sweets. They you know, and I think with Barry, who was 6 years old at the time of his abduction and murder, was just literally lifted off the streets, thrown in the back of a car and gone. These people in this paedophile ring were terrible individuals. So would they have took Reece and hung him up and left him like that after abusing him? Absolutely, they would have done that. Would they have took Kevin off the street, thrown him in the back of the car and raped and murdered him? Absolutely. And I think, would they have taken Reece Boxell, and that's the case that we've just done, because he was either knew too much or because he was going to say something about the abuse that was going on in that shed? Absolutely, they would have. These are very, very dangerous, sadistic people. I think the judge in little Barry Lewis's case said it all really about them. It's just that, you know, these are not really human beings, are they? You know, they're just not. And I think you have to watch the cases to really get a really idea of this gang and what's really going on in London and in Croydon area and Sutton area, where this was happening, and Hackney and all, you know, this radius was quite large. I think Mark was taken from Berkshire area, but only 40 minutes drive from London. And do I think that these were callous enough just to chuck someone in the back of a car and drive? Absolutely. I think with little Barry was taken off the streets. He was gang raped by about 8 men from this gang. Not all of them were convicted for it. He was still alive, but they thought he was dead. They thought he was dead, but he moved, and then they had to get rid of the body. Now, I think it was Leslie Bailey that dumped that body, and this just shows you what front these people have got. Because with little Barry, as Leslie Bailey was going to dump his body, he ran out of petrol. So he carried that body of that boy, who was dying, drugged up, dying, to a garage, filled up some petrol, and got a lift back to his car with Barry. And then Barry's body was found a mile up the road from where that car had broken down from petrol. So these people have got some front. These people don't care about the law. These people don't care about anything. They didn't. So any of these victims that we're talking about here in these cases could have been a victim of this paedophile ring. Now, I think Kevin has been sort of, they think this is what may have happened to Kevin, but I don't know if, as I said, I don't know if they're going to buy him expensive gifts. One of the groomers may have, they may have done it and then used him and then passed him on. That could have been the case, but I don't know. There's something not right about Kevin's case when it comes to this grooming or paedophile ring. Because if the person saw him at 10 o'clock, he'd already had the meeting for 90 minutes. Where was he? Did the police investigate? Did they ask? Did they ask in them days the really important questions? We're talking about 1986 now, very long time ago, isn't it really? And so what do people remember? But listen, this boy's body's never been found. It's never been found. Nothing about him. If I was looking into this as a cold case, and I hope someone picks this up as a cold case because it's a very interesting case, there is evidence out there. There has to be. Where was Kevin getting the gifts from? He would have told someone. Not his mum, not his family, but a mate. They always tell. They always tell. Always. Who did he see for 90 minutes? If the eyewitness is correct, and that was him at 10 o'clock at night. Where had he been? Where had he been? Who had he met? Listen, with this crime, I don't know if it's the Dirty Dozen ring. I just don't know. I wouldn't rule him out, but it wouldn't be my specific look, unless there's something I don't know, because I know that the police were at that time investigating this paedophile ring and others at that time, so maybe they thought it could have been that. Listen, there's 17 plus cases outstanding which they think are related to this paedophile ring of young children of all ages. Bodies have been found, some have not, and that is excluding the 3 cases that I've just talked about. So there's many, many more serious crimes that are cold cases that are probably related in some way to this gang, or others that was working out of Croydon area or Hackney area in London in the 70s and the 80s. Actually, right up until the 90s, to tell you the truth. So the police did, as I say, try and really, focus on investigating them and stuff, but that investigation was stopped. So I think this, sting operation, or this undercover operation they was trying to do, was definitely directed at the Dirty Dozen gang, because they were so terrible, these people. And there was plenty of evidence around that there was this grooming ring, operating in this area of London and around this at these times of all these disappearances and the murder of Reece. Now, Essex and the Met Police together, because you had Barry Lewis's body dumped in Essex, so then that brings in a lot. So we knew that and there was lots of other bodies actually found in Essex and surrounding areas. So we knew that they were using London and stuff and just outskirts of London to get the kids. These groups were then, doing what they did, and then they would be killing or dumping these bodies around Essex and different places, because Essex has lots of greenery space, as does Hertfordshire and all these sort of places that they used. So we know that sort of what they was doing. Now that operation was called Operation Stranger, and it tried to identify and break up these sort of paedophile rings, and both these boys, right, and that includes all 3 actually, including Lee Boxell, could have fallen foul to this type of predator. Now, was this really fully investigated at this time? Probably not, right? So I think, as we talked about Sidney Cook before in these other cases, you can really understand what this paedophile ring is really about. And we've covered them, and we're probably going to cover this paedophile ring and probably Hissing Sid and that, because he was like the ringleader of this. And there's a lot really about this paedophile ring. There's a lot. So listen, there was this detective that led an investigation actually into the Britain's most notorious, child abusers, and said that the file could provide evidence for Scotland Yard to investigate the alleged allegations of Westminster paedophile ring. Now listen, when we're looking at that, you're looking at different sort of paedophile rings, like your Jimmy Saviles and all this, what they think the higher class ones, the ones with the more money, right? The Dirty Dozen were certainly not in that league, but they would have all known each other. Believe it, they would have all known each other. So I think his name was Roger Soldier, said that he was delighted that if the Metropolitan Police were to reopen this Operation Orchard, where they were looking into lots of different things, and the inquiry into Sidney Cook, this gang, this Dirty Dozen, paedophile ring, which abducted, abused and murdered lots of children in the 70s and the 80s. And this was based out of this Kingsmead estate in Hackney in London. This is where they were based. So the murders of 3 children is Jason Smith, Barry and Mark. Now I think Barry was 6 and Mark was 7 and Jason was 14 at the time of their murders. And he believed that, and on the evidence that they had collected at this time, that's who believes that there is 17 plus more cases or of unsolved crimes related to all these. And I think, you know, what I don't know why, even to this day, because these are now a lot of cold cases and we can't forget about these paedophile rings, because they may not be in your face now and they may not be doing that where they're taking kids off our street. I mean, that still happens, right? But I also spoke about, when we talk about paedophile rings, is that kids now are either brought up into it, born into it, okay? And so, you know, in the 80s, 70s and 80s and early 90s, it was easier, wasn't it, to take children, our children, from the streets because there was no CCTV. The investigating skills were different of the police. It's much harder to find people like predators like this. Today, it's much more difficult for them to do this sort of thing. That doesn't mean to say that these paedophile rings are not still happening. They've just gone underground. And if they was picking children up off our streets willy-nilly, we would soon find them. So these cases, right, and especially this of Colins, Hicks and Boxell, are in some way related because of the area of where they lived. And at the time of, you know, the year 1985, 1986, 1988 were all in relation to other crimes that were happening in that area. The other thing is with Lee Boxell is that there was the paedophile sort of group or ring happening, you know, in the shed. And if you want to know more about that case, you can look at the full case on that. So, and I've said before that Lee was, again, I think it's 5'7", 15 at the time of his disappearance. Paedophiles like certain looks. And so he could have been, and as I said, this gang, if they'd wanted him, they would have just took him. I think it's more the case that Lee found out what was going on at the shed, and in the end they had to kill him, and again his body has never been found. So listen, these cases are really all unsolved cases. Reece Colins' body is buried, but his family still need answers. His mum and dad's passed away now, but there's other family members that still need answers to really what happened, because really here, on the evidence, just by reading it in black and white, you can see that there was someone else present at the time of Reece Colins' murder, because that's what it was. If someone left the scene, why did they leave the scene? And could this murder of this boy also be one of the, you know, the paedophile rings that were going on at that time? Absolutely it could have. Don't think all their MO is the same. It's not. Absolutely it could have. Because Reece was scared of the dark. He would never have gone to a parkland with trees, with somebody else or not. There was somebody there. And if Lee's hands were clean and everything else was clean, he hadn't touched the tree or the belt. Or the belt. Today we have forensics and that would have sorted that out quite quickly. But do I believe that Reece Colins took his own life, even by accident? Absolutely not. I don't. And as we now move on to Kevin Hicks, I don't know if Kevin Hicks was taken by the Dirty Dozen gang or any other paedophile ring at that point. Can't say that it wasn't. But to me, there's things that don't add up here with this case. Who was giving Kevin expensive gifts, which he chose or was told not to talk about? These are the questions that we need to be looked at. Why didn't he tell anyone? Did he really go to buy an eggs, or was it a ruse to get out? Now, in them days, you couldn't just text someone, meet me down the road. So it was a Sunday. So where had he been on the Saturday? Where had he been on the Friday? Saying he was at home on a Sunday and everything was normal, all right, you know, okay. But he had arranged to meet somebody. He had. So when? How many prior days to that? The Saturday, the Thursday, the Friday, you know, all this. They should look back. These are the questions that should have been answered here. Why didn't the shopkeeper, why wasn't he asked about the eyes? How didn't he know that Lee brought eggs or not? This is the issue here with these cases. You know, did he really need eggs? Did they go to the school and say, listen, did this lad have an O-level economics exam tomorrow? Was he lying? If so, why was he lying? There's questions there. So do I believe that this was a paedophile ring that took this boy? No. I believe it was someone local. I believe he was having an affair with something. Something was going on. Something went wrong. Something went wrong. I think Lee's body is probably local to that area. And if questions were asked more in this local area, and also his school friends and everything else, this case could still be broken. If it was that, it could still be broken. As for Lee Boxell case, and you can watch that case, yes, I do think it was a paedophile ring that took him, or it was a paedophile gang that would not and could not have this boy start in trouble. And so I think he was murdered for what he knew. So anyway, you know what to do. If you found this case interesting, you can put your thumbs up. You can subscribe at any time. You can catch this case on Spotify on our Let's Have a Chat About Murder. You can catch up. Actually, previews of all the cases are now going to be on our Facebook sites. A little bits of previews of the cases coming up. Little bits of filming. I've been doing it myself. You know, I think Murder Mornings is coming back, and I think this on a Thursday. I'm going to try and do that on a Thursday. So please join me for that. Have any questions ready for that. But listen, this case, these people, these poor children, and they were children, went missing many, many years ago, over 30 odd years ago. And there's been no evidence of two of these children, Lee Boxell and Kevin Hicks. If you know anything, please have a look. Call 101. Have a look at the slides I put up for information. And if any of you, by any chance, know anything, whether you think it's the most smallest piece of evidence that's irrelevant to you, ring up, say something. Let's get these bodies found. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Until the next time. Bye-bye.